Okay. Hey guys, it's Red. To my right is some strange man named Thumbs. Uh,
Yeah, it's me. I'm Thumbs. It's your boy. Thumbs up, guy. Okay, I'm gonna kill myself now. I'm sorry.
please
I'm
do.
sorry. I'm
Anyway,
sorry.
we are taking you guys through the lore and stuff of Stoneveil. We've been
Yeah,
quiet, we've been foolish, and here's your 23
very
minutes
forward-hearted.
of nerdy shit.
Hell yeah! Okay, now what? Now what do we do?
So we're going to
Okay,
be starting off with talking about the dawn of
the dawn, yeah,
time.
dawn, yeah,
Thumbs,
the
if
dawn
you
of
could
fucking yeah.
get us started on the dawn of time.
All right, baby. But before we get started on the dawn of time, I think there's a little bit of a change of scenery that's kind of needed here. Look at this nice scenery. We have some lovely scenery. So back 200 years ago. Right now we're in the year 200 or so, but back 200 years ago, the gods came all collectively to Stoneveil. They kind of came to it because they were bored with their lives. They had so much jobs to do for past like what fucking like millennia before mortals existed. They kind of were just sitting there, just doing their jobs. I mean, they were bored as fuck. So they found Stoneveil. They're like, oh, this place is kind of cool. It has, a bunch of magic potential on it and a bunch of little creatures running around. Creatures that were created by one god known as Lilith. Now, she hasn't really been mentioned much because, that we'll get into that later. But she created mortals to begin with, and she imbued them with all of these defenses against, potential godly attacks, right? But the gods really didn't care about that, right? So back to about from right now back like 2 centuries, they were the gods kind of, even though Lilith tried to protect the mortals, they still killed them. And Lilith's defenses only worked so much as to defend their mind and their soul, but the gods still treated them like just beat their asses in other ways. They killed them, maimed them, did awful things to mortals. The gods were horrible. They all took a part in this, and even those some that didn't take a part in it, they still let it happen. So during this time, the gods, all the current gods that we know now, we're back there then. All the current gods being the gods of cause, that you'll see right behind me. Actually, you won't because we don't know what they look like. We don't know what they look like. They've never shown themselves to mortals before, so who knows what they look like. So then you have those like Amoria. You have Ephemus, you have Oravon, you have Aragos, you have Aporion, who is also really nothing known about that guy either. Don't know
I
what he
think
looks like.
Orvon. Don't know anything about
And
him.
the big
So
three I mentioned earlier, I didn't give
we
a name
also
to them. That's
got
Vitalis, Quitithus, and Finality. Those are the three big guys who don't look like. Oh yeah, there's also Onal, who is kind of like another category god called one of the gods of after. They're split into three categories: gods of cause, god of effect, and gods of after. Which Onal is like part of that category, which is we don't know what bro looks like either. No idea what they look like. Now the gods, they did a lot of things like I described earlier, but as you might know, they disappeared. Most of the gods disappeared, leaving behind just a couple of gods, that being the ones I just listed, believing those guys. Why those gods left are still unknown. We do, however, know from what we can kind of infer around here that there may have been a war. There may have been a holy war between the mortals and the gods because, of course, the mortals were mistreated by the gods, and they didn't really like that. And from what our sources can even entail, we believe that there was a faction that specifically went out of their way to target the gods. And whether or not they won is still up to be debated, as we don't even know their name or anything really about them as of now. So it's really hard to say anything, honestly. But we do know that one way or another, something happened. A lot of the gods just left Stoneveil, and we're left with what we have now. So, at the beginning of Arium, before anything, the kingdoms existed outside of Arium during the gods all being dicks era, right? So then, a lot of the people after that era kind of came on ships just like this, and kind of just decided they would come and find new land, and they found this place Arium. And now we come to the part where we talk about the actual start of Arium. So, basically, we all started with, after most of us came here in our own ways, from space, from another dimension, maybe from a boat like we showed before. But one way or another, we're all here. So once people got here, they started building factions. Those factions consisted of many people from many different walks of life, and just many different people with many different ideologies and many different structures of how they believe Arium should have been run. Now, we're about to go into depth of some of them. We had, starting with the Bronze River. The Bronze River is a medieval faction that kind of made themselves known as a no-nonsense faction. During the first embassy meeting, they stood up against dark magic specifically, though they didn't really give any detail of what dark magic happened to be. And they don't have a ruler. They have Sir Marshall, who operates just with I'm not sure how he operates. Honestly, he's kind of reclused a bit, I would say. Most of Bronze River is really. They keep to themselves for the most part, and they seem to be stuck in their ways from what we can tell. They tend to stick to kind of a medieval roots with kind of a air of fairness about them. They always treat each other with fairness, and they don't seem to have a full one person says one thing and everyone listens. They kind of have a democracy going on, and other than that, they have shown themselves to be fairly well-meaning people, if more recluse than others. The main member of them all being Shull of Bronze River, at least Shull of Bronze River at the time. Shull being a very helpful person to anyone that would come to him. Constantly helping and running the trade docks and setting up trade for the entirety of Arium, sending in exports or sending out exports and getting imports from other continents, and really starting up some form of economy from the very beginning of Arium. Um, Another faction that made themselves known towards the beginning is we call them Mortalis. Mortalis now made themselves, at least in the very beginning, made themselves out to be with a very specific distaste for the gods. Now they have since rectified that misconception, saying that they just don't like reliance on the gods. They prefer to keep things in their own two hands. They prefer to not have to outsource themselves at all. And they seem to have a more socialist kind of democracy going on about them. And other than that, they seem like well-meaning people. They haven't really done much of anything wrong, except, you know, be a little bit rude to some gods. But, who isn't these days? Um, Moving on, we have one called Sanctum. Sanctum started up by a singular queen, seemed to not understand really the delicacies of running a kingdom, and as such, it's kind of went nowhere these days. But back in those days, she was buoyant and would interact with anyone and everyone, and would spread her ideals of peace and freedom across the lands a lot. And to some people didn't like her ideals of freedom, which we will go into detail later. We had Burnmark, the Burnmark Assembly. The Burnmark Assembly was a more radical nation, with more radical views and more, well, they were more forceful with him, so to speak. And from what we can remember and what we have written down in our scribes of gathered historians, it seems that they weren't really well liked, and they didn't like really much of anyone else, leading to a lot of turmoil amongst all of the factions, leading to, well, discontent amongst plenty of factions, and rivalries begin to broke out. We had the Veil. The Veil, they were more for people who couldn't be out during the daylight, more people like vampires and ghosts and people who couldn't be out in the daylight. They wanted to build an entire underground city with tunnels leading everywhere, but as we'll come to find out, that never got around to happening. The Collective is another kind of unknown-ish faction. It exists as a form of a historian kind of complex where they go out and they observe and collect information and make sure they, you know, keep everything preserved. They haven't really done much, and they haven't really shown their presence outside of a couple of small mentions in the embassy meetings, which we'll get to later. We have Deepstalk Inc., which is a company that is, well, capitalistic in nature. They value money over everything else, their leader being Micah, and Micah's co at the time being Neri. who both work together to build a train empire, or at least attempt to. And they aren't well liked for the capitalistic beliefs. They are liked by some, but a lot of factions find discontent with them for their more lean towards money over ideals. Though their leader Micah seems, even though they value money, seems to also have some morals, though we have not had a chance to see what those morals are, given their absence as of late, or even back in the day, as they usually kept to their work. Um, with next, we had the Rogues Guild. The Rogues Guild is a band of thieves, as they proclaim themselves, going around and they would steal from people, making it obvious who did it for some reason. Maybe they wanted the publicity of it. Um, we're not totally sure, but we do know that their leader Krat, being a goblin, is really adamant about respect towards the goblin people and is adamant about stealing. We have New Arcadia, which not much is known about them, as they never really stepped out into the sunlight. They never really interacted, even at the embassy meetings. They kind of just, we know of their existence very vaguely, given that there are some small structures relating towards them out in the ocean, which we found. Um, we have the Pathmakers, which were a small faction organized to make paths across the country, leading to greater infrastructure. But as we have heard, their leader has, well, they're dead. They've been killed. One way or another, they've died due to illness or something. We are not really totally sure. The Cursed Ones are a faction of. They're a faction of races that have been talked down to by the wider range of society. Basically, people who are on the run from racism and people who haven't had a fair shot at life or anything due to prejudice and other things of that nature. They work to protect them, and they are an organization that typically works completely anonymous, with their leader being Aquanor, who we have not seen around as of late. But back in the day, she used to be very active, and she used to be very open about her community and her faction, and she would recruit daily. These days, the Cursed Ones have faded off into, well, we don't know because we haven't seen them in quite some time. But these are the factions that started Arium in its very early days. It started with these few factions. Now, moving on to the embassy meetings. These were a very large Arium at its beginning. At its beginning, the embassy meetings work to bring all of these factions I mentioned all together under one roof and one banner to work together as one unified force known as the Council. Now, the Council was responsible for creating laws and regulations. There were three core meetings at the very beginning. The first meeting went on to introductions. People went up and they talked and they got to know each other and they got to know each other's ideals. This was the very start. This, not much happened if we remember correctly, but if you really want to see what happened during that meeting, there is, however, a video that we have made public on the channel you're watching this on now. So if you really want to know more about the details of it, you can go look there. That is the first embassy meeting, and there is one of the second embassy meeting, I believe. You can look at that. But the embassy meetings kind of took a turn during the second one, I believe, when people began to ask questions. Those questions involved things like slavery, how to prevent that. People took that as if these people who were asking about slavery were advocating for it, but they weren't. They were, at the end of the day, attempting to dissuade slavery, attempting to make laws. But that sparked conflict, that sparked arguing. People began to wonder what defined freedom. And this went on to spark a war. Not a true war, but the potential for one, being between the Burnmark Assembly, Mortalis, and versus Sanctum. And Sanctum's ideals of freedom were pure in itself. They believed freedom was something everyone was owed, and they deserved a second chance no matter what they did. If you were a murderer, as long as you came within Sanctum's walls, you could be cleansed and have a second chance at life. Their views were considered radical. Their views on freedom were considered dangerous, which is why Bernmark and Mortalis both wanted to engage in a war with Sanctum. And that never went through. The reason why will be made clear in a moment. But during this, more and more turmoil began to build up at the embassy meetings. People were getting tired of this. People were tired of all these hard questions. They were tired of all of these politics. They just wanted action. The people wanted action and they didn't want to talk anymore. So, during one embassy meeting, there was a god named Ephemus that came in. During the meeting, Ephemus was outed as a god and began to talk. People began to disrespect them. One figure, being the leader of the Burnmark Assembly, that being Zena, directly attempted to attack Ephemus. Though their attacks did absolutely nothing to Ephemus, he still took that to heart. That leading to the very next embassy meeting, the final embassy meeting, that one not being on the channel, as no one was there to record it, or the video was corrupted. Um, that in that meeting, or wait, that was recorded, wasn't it, Red? That was recorded. That was recorded.
We have
Honestly,
a clip of the smiting of Xena.
yeah, the smiting. We have a clip of the smiting. It was one. I don't remember which one was recorded or not. It's very finicky because our camera crew. We haven't really been able to get an actual definitive camera crew yet, but we do have a clip at very least of Zena being smited. Ephemus proceeded to enter it, make an announcement, and proceeded to smite Zena as a show of force to know to not disrespect Ephemus again and to show the power of the gods. That led to the end of the Sanctum and Burnmark Wars. That before it even began. After that, everything began to kind of die down again, and everything began to grow stagnant when it came to politics. But before that, before we even get to this part, I almost forgot. Red, would you go into detail about the alliance forming?
The alliance was, well, it was formed at the end of the second embassy meeting between five different factions, I believe.
I'm pretty sure it was every single faction minus Mortalis. Um, yes, I believe it was every single faction other than Mortalis and a few of the other small ones.
Um, yeah, because it then would have consisted of Bronze River, as we hosted it there for a little while, Thieves Guild, Spire. Was Deep Salt a part of it?
I don't believe so. I don't believe Deep Salt was a part of it. You're right. Deep Salt wasn't added because, again, going back onto people disagreeing with their capitalistic nature. Um,
And especially with who
yes.
one of the heads of the alliance at the time being Cal.
And Cal disliked that. One of the other heads, being Sanctum, Queen All, was at odds with Mortalis for obvious reasons, given the war approaching. So that's why Mortalis wasn't added. The alliance was started at a as a way to protect all of the factions from Burnmark in the event of war, which was on between Mark. So the alliance was preparing for its own war, um, for the war against Burnmark, of course. Is there anything else I'm forgetting, Red?
I think that's the main part. At this point in time, the alliance has been, for lack of better word, disbanded,
Mm.
as a number
Yes,
of the
after
factions don't exist at this time or have just fallen.
yes, after Burnmark was struck, after Zena was struck down, Burnmark proceeded to be hunted down and completely obliterated. So there wasn't a need for the alliance because the alliance was made as a protection from Burnmark. So with Burnmark gone, the alliance was needed, and Mortalis decided to fall out of the war itself, leaving Sanctum to its own devices, and the alliance naturally went away. Now you, however, you Red, do know quite a bit about Spire, and Spire will be very important in the near future. So why don't you give a little heads up on how Spire was created?
So, Spire was founded right before the second embassy meeting. Then it was a smaller faction consisting of Cal, the Redstone mechanic. Shoal of Bronze River was a co member and helped found it at that time. At that time, Spire came in kind of like a thunderbolt. They stormed into the second embassy meeting, preaching how they planned to start a communal railroad system to connect the nations, um, and all of that. It later did not become that, as the leader of Cal did sadly pass away due to the killing of his own brother, Consip. Um, Not much is known really of the inner workings. Um, Spire, I can say, was a very laxed nation to their people, letting them live where they wanted, letting full creativity. That was their biggest thing, is you were able to be creative to the extent of which you wanted, and experimentation. Um, Most notably, would be honestly Cal himself experimenting on himself. He had one of the biggest generators on the server at that time, and yeah, then it collapsed. What, about a month ago?
That's yeah, that it did collapse about a month ago, but that is going to be up at the next portion. Speaking of which, time to head there. And here we are at Spire. Look at it. Look at that beautiful
It's
factory back there.
beautiful.
It is wonderful. And so, this is the era of Spire now. Not currently, but the one we're talking about now. This is kind of the middle one. This kind of encapsulates the entirety of December, what kind of happened in that month in the server. But this is the start of the train war. Back in the embassy meetings, Hal, leader of Spire, went on to suggest some trades. Started. You know what, Red? You know more about this than I do. How about you talk on this a little bit?
The train war. Yeah, that was definitely a thing. The train
Yes, it was.
war, was between Deep Salt and Crystal Spire. At the time, they were at odds and didn't quite like each other. And when I say didn't quite like each other, they like absolutely hated each other, because each person was
Yes, they
doing
did.
trains, and communism is not a thing.
Not at all.
Later on the
Yep, damn
line,
Reds.
Cal kept doing the train stuff, though he eventually backed down, surrendered all of his resources then to Slime. Slime now has
To Micah. To
Micah.
Micah. It was yeah.
Micah Slime. Yeah.
Yeah, and why did Red relinquish it all to Micah? Like Cal? I mean Cal. Fuck, I'm messing up too. Whatever.
Because he didn't want a petty squabble to ruin a potential friendship, as they, in reality, had quite a bit in common.
Except the capitalism.
Except that, yeah.
Yeah.
After that, after the train war, Cal went on to start building the casino, which,
Never got fucking done.
teaser is still under
Couldn't build
construction,
the roof.
and the roof is
It
almost
no,
done.
don't lie to the people. You still haven't even touched the roof.
Actually, I have.
Have you? Have you?
Yeah, it's half done.
What did you go with finally?
Wouldn't you like to know? Anyway.
That's why I fucking asked. Anyway, next up, after the train war, we kind of went on for let's see what happened next. Yes, there was something that happened shortly during the train wars, I believe. Something at the church. There's a man known as Elian Pring, who had at the time was the host of the Crystal Spire network. Who Elian Pring, being a slime, worked as the host of the Crystal Spire Network, broadcasting a form of propaganda to people, always hyping up Crystal Spire and all of that fun jazz. One day there was a kind of announcement happening at the church in Sanctum, St. Graham's Church, and During that, Elene Pring showed up and began to question the god known as Aragos, who was revealing themselves as the patron of Sanctum, which we will be revealing the reason why in but a moment. And during that, Elene began to antagonize Aragos and began to asking questions. Aragos then proceeded to begin, a whole shebang about threatening people, attempted to kill a couple people and whatnot, and all of that. That then led to the Aragos-Elian Wars, where it was a war of information between Aragos and Elian. And Aragos went out, hired people, and Elian went out, hired people, and eventually they signed off on a mutual agreement to forget the entire thing. And because it was too much hassle for both of them, as they both wanted the information, one of them wanted it in the public, the other one wanted it kept quiet. So they eventually just kind of forgave the entire thing. But they do kind of still hate each other because of it all. And they're actively at each other's throats. Speaking of the reason why Aragos was the patron of Sanctum was due to a deal that all had made with Aragos. The exacts of the deal are kind of forgotten, as this was never really written down in contract form because, well, let's be real, me and Red got lazy, so we just didn't feel like doing that. So I don't remember what the deal was about, but one way or another, all kind of made a deal with Aragos, and Aragos became the patron of Sanctum. And so that's kind of why that happened. But later in the line, Aragos did make a kind of proposition to all, as all proceeded to go down this mental spiral and whatnot, and she kind of started to turn into the thing she didn't like, being a tyrant, kind of, being just an all-around. Um, and so Aragos offered to show all. Am I lagging? I don't think I'm lagging. Am I lagging, Brad? Am I?
Just a little bit, nothing bad.
My frames are disappearing. What's going? Oof. We can cut that. We can cut that part. I just didn't want it messing up with my mic. Um, but proceeding. But after that, or before that, sometime during this entire time period, Aragos kind of made a deal with all, and well, showed all the future, where all proceeded to see what her lineage would do. And this led down another mental spiral, which made her realize that her best friend at the time, Alistair, was not a good person by any means, and actively comes from the future, and actively had relations with her great 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 grandson, who was a very 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 evil man and a tyrant. This kind of messes with the timeline. So if later down the line you see some timeline issues, you know who to blame.
It was all
Aragos
All's
is.
fault.
It was all Aragos' fault. Aragos did all
All
that shit.
did it.
No, it's all Aragos.
Should have just
Aragos
said
did that shit.
yes.
No, Aragos shouldn't have offered. But regardless, moving on. What happened next was there were let's see. Hold on, give me. So we're gonna cut this part out. Hold on. It was okay. Cal's death. I think the rise of the network happened after Cal's death. Yggdrasil being built started after Cal's death. Finn's rise started after Cal's death, and the Fallen Angel rumor started after Cal's death, and the rivalry between Junk and Elliot started after Cal's death. Okay, so next up, and so as all this was happening in Sanctum, and Sanctum was beginning to go into a form of ruin with Aragos and all with each other like that, there was some issues happening at Spire. More so, Cal began to have an increased amount of damage to his body due to his sickness. Due to this redstone poisoning, he was beginning to act sporadically and act a form of insane. During this period of time, there was also a Dulohand known as Jester who followed him around and was ready to take his soul. This Jester would inevitably go on to be the leader of the four jesters of the apocalypse, and all of that. But not much information is known about the four jesters. But in this scenario, but in this part of the history, Cal began to kind of gets really sick and really sporadic with his decisions, leading to a meeting between all his brother Khan and himself, where all at the time was trying to gain ownership of Spire to prevent Spire from going into ruin due to Cal wanting to offer it to Jester, who was a Dullahan, who would theoretically do no good with it, but probably would probably do evil things with Spire for being real. So all wanted to prevent that with happening, and Khan supported all becoming the new leader. And so that is what they had this meeting about. At the end of this meeting, Khan and Cal began to get into an argument. All settled this argument, preventing either party from doing any form of damage to each other because Khan was threatening to kill Cal. But later down the line, well, that didn't really work out properly, now did it? Cal ended up being killed by the hands of Khan. And then that preceded the complete collapse of Spire internally, which, leading to collapses, began the rise of the network, which was later after that meeting, Cal and Khan had met up, and Khan killed Cal and proceeded to attempt to hide the body. Khan did, however, involve all in this later down the line, and even more later down the line, Khan was found out about this and is now on the run in present day. In the past, however, during this era of Spire, after Spire's collapse, it began to leave a giant power vacuum as Spire led to this boom in technology and this boom in government. It allowed for people to be unified under one banner. Honestly, Spire was the closest thing this world had ever come to a government, and with its collapse, led to chaos and a form of anarchy where everyone kind of began to do what they wanted and split off from each other, and stagnation kind of occurred. But one shining beacon did erupt from this bit of chaos that happened. It was the network led by Ellen Pring. Ellen Pring had began to slowly accrue himself a form of a team as well as a unknown benefactor on the side to secure himself after in the event of Crystal Spire's collapse, rebranding from the Crystal Spire network to just the network. Him and his co-leader, maybe co-leader, co-friend, I don't know, employee, I don't know, Sin began to recruit more and more people, leading them to become a very large and influential faction, leading radio broadcasts and fashion shows and all of the like, bringing the community together. In present day, they are currently one of the most powerful factions in terms of pure influence, as they control the entirety of the media in present day. But back in this time, there was another rival broadcasting station called Orlar Broadcasting, which was led by a man named Jugular. Jugular and Eileen Pring were direct rivals, as they constantly were at each other's throat, and for a short period of time, Jug did work for the network before going on to brand Orlar Broadcasting Network on his own. Um, Before we even get into all of that, there was another person that began to slowly rise with the fall of Spire. Finn. Finn has been, we don't know much about his doings, but we do know one thing. He has a weapon of mass destruction. This weapon is called the nuke, or the orbital cannon, one of the two names. It is not known by many, not at the current moment, but we are here to tell you of its existence. It is very powerful and it's very dangerous. And Finn has begun to amass a form of a following through it threatening to use it. We don't know what he's planning with this following or what's going to happen. We do, however, know that he's hosting a banquet. We can, however, guarantee that the orbital cannon will not be fired on the banquet. So do not let that discourage you from attending this upcoming weekend, as it won't fucking kill you. He's not going to do that because then he'd kill himself too, and he doesn't want to kill himself because he's not suicidal. So not to mention gods are going to be there, and you don't really want to do that to the gods because they'd get angry at you and probably kill you if you didn't die in the first place. So that would be just stupid effect. So he's not doing that. But other than that, we don't know what he's planning, but he's planning something. During the building of this cannon, however, there was another faction called Yggdrasil, which began to emerge itself as the largest current faction in today's date in Stoneveil history, with over 15 members, outside of the Abandoned Dream, of course, which had over 20 members back in the original iteration of Stoneveil. That Yggdrasil is planning on building a large underground city that is completely neutral for everyone to join. And that is what they've been working on currently. We're getting more into the modern day stuff as we continue on, because most of what we talk about is pretty recent. And we're going back to Ellie and Pring in the network. During Ellie and Pring's and Jug's kind of rivalry, there was a moment where Reeve pulled him to the side, pulled Ellie and Pring to a secure location, and attempted to talk to Ellie and Pring. Reeve offered a potential alliance between the network and Mortalis, as long as the network and Mortalis worked as a revolutionary faction against Finn and whatever Finn was doing. Ellie and Pring didn't want to be involved in that, and Ellie and Pring didn't trust Reeve. And one thing led to another, and inevitably Ellie and Pring did kill Reeve of Mortalis. Reeve did inevitably survive, however, but um, he was pushed off a large tower and presumably went to his death. And for a while, people assumed that he was dead. It was kept a close guarded secret for a while, as Ellie didn't want to be found out for his murder. But the host of the Olar Broadcasting Network, Jug, did inevitably find them out and began to broadcast about it, leading to a bit of defamation on Ellie Pring's name, which Ellie Pring did not has yet to address these claims, and we don't know when he will. And we're gonna cut this part out because I'm now gonna look to see what else we have. The Church Sanctum. I guess we'll talk about the Fall of Sanctum, Reed, Jug, Alien Rivalry, Resident Network, and so Fall of Sanctum. Okay, I guess we're going to Fall of Sanctum. And then finally, the closest thing we have to current date is the Fall of Sanctum. Sanctum had fallen into obscurity ever since All Seeing the Future. She has reclused herself, and she proceeded to cut herself off from anything outside. And all of her friendships kind of eroded away to obscurity, and inevitably leading to Sanctum basically not existing until a yet to be revealed faction known as the Red Imperium came in and bought the Sanctum from her, which happened merely just a few days ago. And so Sanctum no longer exists. And that is all that we have at this current moment. If you do see this video and happen to see something like, what the fuck, where is this thing that happened? They didn't talk about this thing. Please let us know, and then we'll, put it in the description of the video or make a extra mini video talking about it in the future. But I believe that is all. We have caught you completely up to date on everything that's happened in Stoneveil history, or in our administration of Stoneveil. We've caught you up to date with. Oh my god, I'm lagging so much. I can't even do the outro. God damn. So am I lagging in? Am I gonna lag again? Oh, I'm gonna lag again. Why am I not moving? I'm sorry. But we basically caught you up to date with everything that's happened in current Stoneveil history. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you at the banquet this upcoming Wednesday. Wednesday.
Wednesday.
What? Wednesday?
Let us
No.
formally invite you to the banquet this Sunday at 12 p.m. CST. We hope to see you there. Let the era of the Rise of Kingdoms begin.